Welcome to Rick's Corner. I got Jerry Branham back, and we're going to get into some stuff later in one of the shows about proteins, but I brought up a subject that Jerry knows some of the guys, but he doesn't know all the guys. But back in the 70s, Joe Gold had his, we used to call it, or Seymour Koenig called it, the cast of background players. Those are the guys that come to the gym that don't compete, that aren't really into bodybuilding, but they're there every day, and every gym has them, right?
Right.
Every gym has his background players that you know them by what they look like, the way they train, their discussions, and they're just guys who like to have camaraderie with other guys and sit and BS and talk about a lot of stuff. But back in those days, we had characters, and the characters, Jerry may not know all of them, but first of all, you remember Bugsy Siegel?
I remember him, but again, I never spoke to the guy.
Okay, well, Bugsy was, his nickname was Bugsy. His name was Bob, but he drove a Cadillac convertible. He had thick black hair and a big sweatshirt and a big belly, and he would always take a quart of milk and pour vodka in it and down the whole thing before he trained. And then he'd come upstairs and do these bench presses, and they were one arm, and then he'd get that one up, and this one come up to match, and then he'd throw the bar back and stand up, and he wouldn't do much. This is Bugsy Siegel.
And he never changed, right?
Never changed. He looked like a Chicago gangster. And then we had Bug-Eyed Louie. Do you remember Bug-Eyed Louie? Louie Paul?
I probably do, but you know.
He was another one. They call him Bug Eyes because he had bug eyes, but he would always look at your wrist to see what kind of watch you had on because he was into watches. This guy was into watches.
Did he steal them or just look at them?
No, he just liked to know what kind of watch you were. Now, you said you didn't know who XR is.
XR, I don't know.
XR was a short little guy that looked like Sonny Bono that hung around with Joe, and he had a little Dodge van, and he had a funny little mustache. And Joe called him XR because there was a JR, which was a junior, so he made him an XR.
Okay.
This was it. These are names he made up for these guys.
Right. Well, Joe was famous for that.
Famous for that.
Yeah.
So I borrowed XR's van when I moved to help load all my stuff. He's probably all of about 5'3". And then there was Einar the plumber. Do you remember him?
I knew.
Einar had two silver teeth.
I knew, right.
Big belly, Swedish guy.
Yeah.
Joe Gold kicked him out of the gym. You know why?
Right. Why's that?
Because he wasn't nice to Joe's dog.
Is that right?
Yes.
Einar used to come up to me and tell me that the homosexual guys in the gym were putting a book together of all the guys and stuff like that. He had all these weird. He was the original conspiracy theory guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a nice guy, but just you know, bonkers. You know.
Oh, he's bonkers. He had a big belly. He was a plumber, but he couldn't fit under the sink to fit anything. Then we had Chubby Arms Charlie. Do you remember him?
No, I don't know him.
Charlie worked for the phone company, and he was like a nondescript guy. That he had chubby arms, but that was all he had. And he would help Joe with all the equipment. In fact, when Joe died, he left him the gym.
Is that right?
He left him the gym, and Charlie didn't know what to do with it, so it just kind of like folded.
No kidding.
Yeah. When Joe Gold died and World Gym was still there, all these guys came to the gym. They had free membership because they were all friends of his over the years.
Right.
So then I guess Mike Garrett said, look, he's the attorney for Joe. He says, you've got to pay for membership now. And they said, why? Joe never charged us. He said, well, he died. Right. And now the gym has to keep going, and so you got to do something to pay the rent.
Sure.
They all refused, and the gym folded. That was the end of that.
So now they have no gym.
They have no gym.
That was smart.
Then we had the Gopher. Do you remember the Gopher?
The Gopher sounds familiar.
It was Chuck Colress.
Chuck Colress, I know very well. Sure.
Chuck Colress was a short little guy with an amazing body.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I could tell you a story about him.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Chuck Colress used to work. Now, years ago, there was a guy who was the president of some sort of theatrical union.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it was Electric or Grips. I don't know what it was. He used to get all the top bodybuilders jobs at the studios.
Right.
So they used to work only when there was filming. It used to be different those days. Most of the filming was only a couple of months a year, like maybe 3-4 months, at the most 5.
Right.
So all the bodybuilders would work at the studios.
That's right.
With top pay. I mean, they were making, you remember, this is a union job.
Right.
These guys are making the equivalent of probably about $70, $80 an hour today, right?
Right.
Then, but when they, here's the interesting thing, a lot of the guys like Chuck, when they'd work for the studios, they wouldn't work out. They'd let themselves go.
Yeah.
And so Chuck, he was a short guy, remember?
Right.
And they called him the Gopher because he kind of looked like
a gopher.
He looked like a gopher.
Right.
He'd show up in the gym, Rick, with a little, big, fat little stomach, tubby, you know, no physique at all. Then he would go, and I still remember what he used to do. He used to go on 0 carbs.
Right.
No carbs.
None.
And low fat.
Right.
But he'd keep his protein. And I'm telling you, 3 months later, do you remember what he looked like?
He was ripped.
He was shredded. His abs were so. He placed high in the Mr. America. His abs was so thick and shredded. He had veins going through him.
Right.
I mean, he had the thinnest skin. In 3 months, he went from a little fat man to shredded.
He did.
Yep.
Yeah, he was. He went to a wedding once, and he stripped down and got on the table and posed for everybody. He would do stuff like. Then we had Peacock. You remember Peacock?
As Art Peacock. Art Peacock, I knew.
And sure. I just touched base with him about this past year.
He's still alive. That's
still
good.
alive. He's still training, in good shape.
Wow.
I have a picture. I did that one right there with a leather jacket I borrowed from him for a headshot.
Right.
He was a character, and then Joe Gold had somebody he called the Snail. Do you know who the Snail was?
Snail, I don't know.
Yes, you do. Seymour Koenig.
Seymour, I know Seymour very well.
Very well. Seymour's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
He's brilliant. He's got a lot of really good things to say that are really comical and brilliant. But the reason they call him the Snail because he was always late.
Yeah.
So Joe said the Snail. He's never on time.
I'll tell you, he actually lived across the street from me for about 2-3 years. And every time I'd walk my dog, we'd talk about stories of the old days. He goes way back to he had a tremendous amount of stories about Steve Reeves and all the guys from the 50s. He knew everybody.
He did a lot of movie work. He wrestled.
He was a wrestler. We used to talk about that. He knew all the top wrestlers. You know, the guys, the famous guys that I'm sure you're familiar with.
Right.
He has quite a bit of stories.
He's still around.
He's an intelligent guy.
He's very intelligent.
Yeah.
Do you remember Moby Dick?
Moby Dick, sure. Moby Dick.
This guy.
That was what was Steve Neese.
He passed away several years ago. He was about 6'5".
Right.
He had big, broad shoulders and a small waist, but he wasn't muscular.
Right.
And he'd come into the gym with dark glasses and all this blonde hair, with a black shirt, lat flex, and instantly the finger went up and he was always kicking the nose. And then he'd look at it and he'd eat it.
Oh, listen. I used to tell people, you know what the thing with Moby is? The thing with him is I used to tell people, don't look at him. Because he'd wander in the gym. Remember, he'd wander and kind of just like hang around. He wouldn't work out. He'd just walk around. But if you caught his eye, that was like an invitation. It was like a magnet. Suddenly he'd come up to you and start talking.
And he would go back. The eyes would go back, and he'd start talking. He'd have these.
He'd go like, Mr. Branham. He'd start. I wanted to question you about this article you wrote where you said this guy benched 600.
Yeah, he wanted to get into wrestling. He went up to train with Stu Hart in Canada, and he ran the ring ropes, and he tripped over his own feet, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
In fact, he'd sit on the bench and pick his nose and fall off the bench.
Oh.
I mean, this guy was something else. Then we had Steve Merjanian.
Oh, Steve, I knew.
And still around.
Very strong guy.
One of the strongest guys in the world, right?
Very strong.
Tricep extensions, I believe, overhead with 300 pounds.
I used to see him do incline presses, barbell presses, Rick, with like 450, like this, like it was nothing.
Nothing. And
press behind the neck. That was his special. Remember?
Right.
What would he use? Like 350. I mean, just like
nothing.
Incredible.
Him and Charlie Aarons.
Chuck Aarons. Chuck Aarons, I got to know.
Yeah.
But not in the gym. Outside the gym.
I ran into Chuck Aarons several years ago at Gary Wallach's Deli.
Right.
And I said, Chuck Aarons. He says, yeah. He says, no, I lost 80 pounds. I'd never met him before, and he says, I lost 80 pounds.
Yeah.
And he was still big.
Yeah.
He was sweeping up. He had mental issues.
And he had mental issues, but I'll tell you something about Chuck Aarons. Chuck Aarons, I got to know him, we talked, and I was writing for the magazines at the time, and he was a legend. He was a strength legend. All the stories about him, about the lifts he did and all that. And I practically begged him. I said, Chuck, can I at least do it? No, he didn't want any. He says he used to say the same thing all the time. He'd say, that's all in the past. He says, I don't even want to think about it. But I'll tell you one thing about Chuck. He was a very kind, very gentle, really sweet guy.
Yeah.
And the stories you heard, see, I kind of like, when I first met him, I was almost afraid to go up to him because I thought heard stories of him ripping steering wheels out of cars.
He forced Sanders to pick the fight with him at some drive-in or something. He went up and ripped all the door handles off the car. So they locked the doors and they went to take off. They lifted the car up and the wheels just kept spinning.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
But so I expected this really terrifying guy, and it's amazing. His personality is not like that at all. He passed away a couple of years ago.
Right.
But a really sweet, nice, gentle guy. I remember him telling me a story about how he accidentally ran over a cat with his car, and he started actually crying when he was telling me the story.
Really?
Just a really nice guy.
He got pulled over once for he used to drink milk and throw the cartons in the back seat. And it filled up his back one, and the cop pulled him over for obstruction of vision. You can't see out the back. But these are characters from back then. You don't see these characters today. No. And unfortunately, we didn't have video cameras back then, so we couldn't do any shots.
Right.
I have some still shots I can put up. That's about it. Chuck was holding a girl out in the palm of his hand.
Right.
I'll put that one up. The Missing Link.
Oh, him I knew.
David Carter.
Oh, God.
David Carter always wore shorts, no shirt, and no shoes. And he talked like this.
Exactly.
And I got to really eat the chicken. And I went up to his apartment once, and he's frying chicken in the pan with a lid on it. And all of a sudden, he pulls it out. It's all white and pasty looking, And he's eating it. And I heard this crunching. I said, what are you doing? He said, oh, you got to eat the bones. The bones are really good. The marrow is good for you. And he ate the whole chicken and the bones.
You know what? This guy used to like to eat big bulbs of garlic, raw garlic.
Yeah.
He would take a drink at the fountain, right? the fountain, and I'm not exaggerating, I've never seen this before, since the fountain would, the pungent smell of garlic would be there for like 2 hours.
Oh, I believe it.
I mean, this guy was unbelievable. What you told me, I remember a story about him riding a motorcycle.
Well, that's coming next.
Yeah.
This guy was strong. I mean, he was. He was insanely strong because he was insane. But he would come in the gym, walk over to the squat bar, throw 400 pounds on it, barefoot, no shirt, pair of shorts, and start squatting all the way down. His ass would hit the ground.
Right.
And he could squat like that,
yeah.
cold.
Oh, yeah.
And then he had a motorcycle, and one of the foot pegs was missing. I see him going down the Santa Monica Freeway, and the foot's dangling. He's hitting the pavement, and it's kicking up as he's going. These were crazy guys.
Oh, yeah.
Peanuts West.
Peanuts West, I knew. Peanuts is a legendary power lifter.
Yes, he is.
He was a power lifter, and I could tell you a story about him. Peanuts, do you remember when he tried to go into bodybuilding? It was years ago. It was at the Santa Monica Civic. There was a contest, and I knew Peanuts, you know, and I knew his daughter too. His daughter was a kind of heavy-set woman.
She was smaller Peanuts.
Yeah, well, she was actually a large walnut.
Yeah, I know, right.
But anyway, Peanuts was at this contest, and he was. I went to use the men's room, right, and there he is. He's in there posing in the mirror in the men's room, and he's got the oil on, and he says to me, Jerry, he says, "Be honest with me." He says, "Do I look like shit?" And you know what? And he didn't. He actually looked. I said, Peanuts, honestly, you actually look very good. I don't know how well you're going to do in the show, but what you did, you prepared perfectly. And he was, you know, made him smile.
Oh,
and
that's
stuff.
funny.
He was a nice guy. Nice guy.
Do you remember Yogi?
Yogi, I know. Oh God, I couldn't stand that guy.
Yogi, nobody liked him.
Oh.
He would come to the gym in a pair of black shorts, black T-shirt, black combat boots, and a black fatigue cap, and he'd always scream and yell. And he said he went down to the. He was gay. You know?
Here's the thing about him.
Yeah.
Do you remember how he tried to come off as anti-gay?
Yes.
He would always come up to me and say, you know, all these fags, they're, you know, blah, blah, I hate them, I want to kill them. And then he'd go up, and what he'd do? He'd go up in the shower in the original goals, and he'd watch the guys take showers.
He told us he went down to Camp Pendleton over the weekend and gave 150 blowjobs. This guy's got to be nuts.
Oh, God.
I don't know.
I just couldn't take that guy.
All right, one last guy.
Yeah.
There's more, but he's Bob Schott.
Bob Schott, I knew, yeah. A big blonde guy, right?
Big blonde guy, Bob Schott, who I'd love to find today. He was a funny dude.
Right.
And he was tall, and he would wear a pair of workout pants, and he'd wear a necktie and tie his pants with a necktie. He'd go to the water fountain, he'd take a drink of water, and he'd go with the water like this, and go, and the water would fly up in the air. But he was crazy. He was nuts. And then all of a sudden, we're outside the building, and I heard this. The whole building's starting to shake. He's practicing karate chops against the cinder block in the back of the wall. The whole building is like going back. I don't know why he was doing that. And he was like obsessed with superstar Billy Graham.
Didn't he do a little movie work, Bob?
He did some movie work,
yeah.
And Billy Graham had a Cadillac, an old Cadillac, so Bob Schott bought a Cadillac, and he would ride like Billy Graham, and he'd sit on the armrest and eat bananas driving around town. And then he told me he'd get up in the morning, and before he trained, every morning he'd eat a pound of bacon.
A pound of bacon?
A pound of bacon.
Was it cooked at least?
Yeah, but a pound of bacon.
Well, maybe he was an Elvis fan.
He was a character. I'd see him on auditions sometimes and said, Bob, I haven't seen you around. Why are you? He says, I'm living in Vegas. What are you doing? He goes, don't tell anybody. I'm working for somebody. They don't know. I'm doing something different. So these characters, you know, today we have characters in the gym, but no one gets to really know anybody.
Yeah,
you know, the gyms are so commercial nowadays.
Right.
You see them in passing. But back then, this was an everyday thing.
And I'll tell you why you don't see those guys anymore, because today they throw them at the gym.
Oh, these guys would be in mental institutions.
Yeah, they'd be out.
Yeah, this is a reality show in the making in 1970. We should have done it. There was no video cameras. In fact, when my son was born in '79, Tommy Chung, Cheech and Chong, loaned me his video camera to film my son for a month because there was one of these big cameras.
Right.
But these guys will always last in my mind. They're characters. They're what made up the Venice Beach. That's what it was all about. Right. Then we had Heidi.
Heidi, sure. I saw her recently.
Yes, recently she was around.
Yeah, Heidi was
she was the German girl with a really good body that hung out.
Pumping iron.
Pumping iron.
That's the one sitting on Arnold's shoulder with topless.
Right, and then we had Debbie Pearson, I believe.
Debbie, the little short blonde girl?
Right?
Yeah. She was one of the first.
One of the first in the gym, and then we had the girl that was about 6'3" with a huge dog with rainbow hair.
Oh, her. Is that the big tall one?
Yes.
That's the one who came in the bathroom when I was there.
Me too. I was showering and I heard, "Will you pass me the soap, please?" I said, "Okay, I'm dropping it right now."
Yeah, she just said no. I mean, like you know, the hippie mentality.
Yeah, totally.
It's okay to just walk around naked. You know, no big deal. You know.
She asked me to come over to her apartment and show her how to wrestle. Okay. I feel like I'm wrestling Bozo the Clown.
Oh, that's
like so weird. But Debbie was around because I had Jim Arrington on the other day, and he's 82 and he's still bodybuilding.
Right.
You know Jim?
I probably know by sight. Yeah.
And so he was in touch with her somehow, and you saw Heidi. But those are the only 3 girls in the whole gym from back then.
That's it. Joe would not allow. You know, he had this strict rule of not letting women in the gym.
Right.
Of course, this was very sexist, but in those days you can get around it. But he let those women in, and to this day, I'm not sure why, how they talked him into letting him train there. I don't know how it happened, but it was only those 3 or 4 women. That's it.
That was it, and they were part of the group, and it was accepted. One shower, and he said most guys don't shower anyway, which is true. Yeah. And the women used the shower with the guys.
Yeah, they didn't care.
No, we had one water fountain. People say, "What'd you do for cardio?" We didn't do anything.
No, there was no. I don't think there was even a bike there. Nothing.
No, there was no bike. There was nothing.
Nothing.
So I just wanted to bring this up. These guys were fun. Jerry knows some of them. I know most of them, and a lot of them aren't even around today. They passed away. Some are still around. Seymour and some of these guys. But it was a fun time back then. If you guys would have been back there in the 70s with this camaraderie that we had, walking into the gym was walking into your home with your dysfunctional family because they were all dysfunctional. But that's what made it work, and that's what was so fun about training back in those days.
Right, yeah.
All right.
It was interesting.
It was interesting. Anyway, we're going to close this out because we're doing another show about proteins, and I just wanted to bring this up with Jerry because I thought you guys would love to share this with me. I'm still laughing today about some of the stuff that went on. It's crazy, crazy. Someday we'll do a documentary on that and see if we can find photos. Yeah. Thank you for watching Rick's Corner. Stay tuned for the next episode with Jerry. We're going to talk about protein. See you next.
It's RickDrasin.com. He is the equalizer, baby. See you next time.